Thank you, Robert. I am blessed to be able to tell you that I am not about to introduce a stranger. David Goldberg has been my dear friend, and Marilyn's too, for a couple of decades at least. I don't even know when it started. It feels like it's been forever. So I'm delighted to bring you David Goldberg. He is the publisher of Science of Mind magazine. Tony Lobato works for David, so be nice to David. He is many things. He has done many things. He has titles and all kinds of ways that the world has chosen to kind of decorate David with all these special little things. But once you hear him speak and get to know him, that's sort of superfluous. It's his heart that is special. So I urge you to welcome David Goldberg.
Well, good morning. It's a joy to be with you. And gosh, it feels so good to have people who have known me for so long say I'm not strange. So, and that is the truth. I call Foster and Marilyn among my dearest friends, and it is a joy to be with you. It's great to be back with you. I've been down here a couple of times before, and rumor has it that you hired a new minister a couple of years ago, and she's doing amazing things, and we had to get her out of town. So we bless Reverend Julie, we bless Tony on their vacation. We know that they're getting revived and rejuvenated, and that they're getting everything that they need to come back in an even greater form heading into the fall season, and all of that brings to you and your center. Before we jump in here, I too had a couple of announcements. Thank you for the commercial, Foster, for the seminar this afternoon for the workshop. My partner Rick Finbo and I have created a series of events called Magnify Your Magnificence, and this particular session is on visioning and vision boards. So I'm going to be speaking a little bit about visioning as a spiritual practice, and we're going to take that deeper in our session this afternoon. And then we're also going to talk about vision boards for the new millennium. So there's, spoiler alert, there's no cutting and pasting, there's no glue sticks, and as Foster said, we are committed to be done by 2 for the Bronco fans in the room, and I certainly count myself among them. So please consider that. And then we're also offering another workshop on this Wednesday evening on emergenetics and color therapy. Emergenetics, for those of you who aren't aware, is a personality assessment tool that looks at thinking as well as behavioral attributes. And that's something that I really like, because I know that many of us have done a lot of these tools, and some of them look at thinking internal, some of them look at external, and this particular tool looks at both. And it's in wide use within Centers for Spiritual Living. We use it at CSL with our whole staff, with our leadership council, with our ministers, with our lay council, with our practitioner council. So if you'd like to learn more about that, we're actually going to be meeting at the CSL home office. So we invite you up to, our mailing address is Golden. It's kind of Genesee, Evergreen. At any rate, it's in the mountains, and that's Wednesday night, and we have some information in the back of the room about that if you're interested as well. And what a great invitation from Reverend Julie as part of your growth and nurturing month. As Foster said, my dear friend Cindy Cleveland spoke last weekend. I adore Cindy, and we first met in a grief recovery class. Oh goodness, I don't know how long ago, but it was a long time. And I got to know her heart, and I'm sure that she shared beautifully last week. So as Cindy spoke of prayer as a technology for spiritual living, if you will, so too I wanted to share a little bit about visioning as a spiritual tool. And I love your community vision that was shared on the board at the beginning, that you continue to live that and you continue to step into that. Now, to be clear, the concept of a vision statement is different from the process of visioning that we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about using visioning as a spiritual tool. So it has been said that when we pray, we're asking in some form. We're beseeching, there's something that we're trying to call into our lives. So when we pray, we're asking. And when we meditate, we're listening. We're preparing ourselves for the answer, whatever spirit, whatever the higher power, whatever the Christ consciousness, whatever your term is for that, we're listening for the answer to our request, to our question. And what visioning does is visioning brings together both of those technologies beautifully. So we get to ask, we get to be in that creation stage of what we want and what we're calling in, and we get to listen. We get to listen for Spirit's highest and best for whatever we're visioning about. And we'll speak to that a bit as well. So there are a number of different ways, or a number of different ways we can enter into visioning. We can vision for ourselves. If I want to vision for a new job or a new life partner or abundance or whatever that looks like, I can vision for myself. I can also vision for somebody else, for a loved one, for somebody I don't know, for anybody in between. So we can do that on an individual basis. We can also pull together a group of people, and we can vision as a group. We can vision for a project, we can vision for our community, we can vision for an organization. So like a whole lot in religious science, there's really no wrong way to vision, and there's nothing that you can't vision for. So when I speak of visioning as a spiritual tool, one of the primary people, one of the architects, if you will, one of the people responsible for bringing that to us in religious science is Dr. Michael Beckwith. And Michael has used it for years at his center, the Agape Center in Los Angeles. I'm sure many of you are familiar with him. And let me read you Michael's definition. He says, he defines visioning as an intuitive process for opening and sensitizing consciousness to receive Spirit's vision for one's life. I love that. Opening and sensitizing consciousness to receive Spirit's vision for one's life. And I've shared with you on previous visits, I had the joy and the honor to serve with Dr. Roger Teal on Mile High's Board of Trustees for 3 years. And Mile High visions for everything. It's a regular part of our board meetings. So at the end of the board meeting, once we've worked through all of the business, the spiritual component, whatever we're working on at the time, the board creates 3 or 4 questions that they then submit to the visioning core. It's an ongoing body that is in constant service. So the board provides the visioning core with 3 or 4 questions. Those questions are visioned on all month by this core of volunteers, and then they provide that feedback back to the board, and it's just a beautiful continuous cycle of continuing to use visioning, continuing to be open to Spirit's highest and best. And I would also share with you that Mile High doesn't start a new program, they don't start a new ministry, they don't do a fundraising campaign, they don't do anything until it's in visioning for 6 months. Because we're really interested to know what Spirit has in store for us. I think I know. My human self thinks I'm pretty smart, and this is what I think the congregation might need or what our community might need, and I just allow myself to be in that space of this or something better. Let's open it up. Let's see what'll drop in when we're open at the top. And as part of that process then, this one is fairly extensive. This is Mile High's definition of visioning, and this is what they teach. Visioning is catching God's idea. There is a spiritual ideal, a perfect prototype, undergirding everything that is. In visioning, we make ourselves available to become that idea. We are the conduits for the vision to be revealed. In visioning, we are not telling God what we want. We are sensing into a divine idea for us, or that for which we're visioning, that is so wonderful that it is beyond our imagination. We are opening the way for that which is unlimited to come into view, into our experience of life. We are volunteering ourselves as a place in consciousness that is available to allow the perfection and wholeness of one life to become manifest. So a whole lot of words. What that boils down to for me is exactly what Ernest taught us and what we continue to teach and to learn. Grounded in principle, open at the top, see what Spirit has in store for us. So 3 elements that I will share with you that are integral to virtually all visioning that I have been a part of. 3 questions. The first question is, what is Spirit's highest and best? We simply ask that question directly. What is Spirit's highest and best for my relationship? What is Spirit's highest and best for my business? What is Spirit's highest and best for our teen program? And our teens continue to do such brilliant work. So we open it up at the very beginning and we say, what is Spirit's highest and best? The second question is, what needs to be embraced? What do I need to open up to even more to be able to call this in, right? What needs to be embraced? And the third question then follows logically for my left brain thinkers, what needs to be released? What do I need to let go of to create room for more good in the container of consciousness as I move forward with this project, this program, this desire? So we're going to take just a few minutes unpacking those. Please excuse me, I'm just a little scratchy. We had a beautiful family dinner last night that included 11 dogs. And I love them, and from the little ones to the big ones, and glasses were getting knocked over, and kids were getting knocked over, and all in all, it was a glorious night, and I'm just a little raspy, so excuse me as I work through that. So let's look at that first question. What is Spirit's highest and best? So when I was in ministerial school, one of my colleagues was really called to visioning. That's it. He was just really called to it. He liked it. He wanted to engage us. It suited him. It worked really well. So while we were still in school, I was worried about getting through that next test and, what in the world does luminous, numinous, and, what do these terms mean, and how am I supposed to know all this stuff about all the world's religions? And Jay wanted to pull us together for visioning. I'm like, okay, I'm a good ministerial sort. I can do this. I can support my friend and colleague. So he got us together once a month over the last month or 18 months that we were in ministerial school together. And we had the same list of questions. Every time we got together, it was the same list of questions, and it was the same group of people. So that's the beauty about visioning. You can do it once, and it's informative, and it's helpful, and it's powerful. And you can do it over a span of time to identify themes and processes, and it is even that much more powerful for you. So we got together for our friend and our colleague, and he started with, or he actually had somebody facilitate so he could be a part of it. What is in Spirit's highest and best for Jay's ministry? Now here's a fellow, this was going to be, like many of us, his second or third career, and he loved Colorado, and his family is here, and his extended family is here, and honest to gosh, over the course of that year, the things that kept coming up are expansiveness, sand, ocean, water, seashells, fishing. It was all of this stuff that had to do with a whole lot of things that aren't necessarily readily available to us in beautiful Colorado. And he didn't have to know the how. He wasn't wound up in the process. He wasn't tied to an outcome. He wasn't saying, no, God, that's not what I want. I want a church in Colorado. So he was just open. And, different things came through over the course of the year, and information just kept flowing. And Jay graduated from ministerial school, and one of the things that visioning did for him is it helped him understand that he was prepared for, indeed, he was seeking a senior minister job, and that's who he was, and that's what he wanted, and that's what he was called to do. So he graduated, he accepted a staff ministry at Mile High for a year or two. He actually, we call it candidating in the ministerial business. He candidated for one other church that happened to be in Colorado, and then he saw something come through on the minister's listserv for the Napa Valley CSL. And he's like, huh. So he went through the process, he submitted his packet, he and his wife flew out there, they do the interview, and I'm happy to report that Reverend Jay Lang has been the senior minister at the Napa Valley Center for Spiritual Living for going on 2 years now. He's got a beautiful, thriving community. It's exactly where he was supposed to be, and he's the first one who would tell you that if he wasn't open to visioning, if he wasn't open to what is in his highest and best, he might still be hanging out in Colorado doing something very different, perhaps not nearly as powerful. So what is Spirit's highest and best? That's where the visioning process starts. The second thing that we touched on is what needs to be embraced. And the other thing about visioning, to that whole point of there's no wrong way to do this, when we're envisioning, some people get words, some people get images, some people get smells, some people get a sense or a feeling tone, and you just get to be in no judgment. You just get to write it down however it comes to you. So when we're talking about what needs to be embraced, I'm reminded of our founder. I'm reminded of Ernest Holmes. And here was this really bright man in the early part of the 1900s looking at all of the world's religions. And he was studying philosophy and psychology and theology and mythology. And, he was just a man of letters, and he was interested in so many things. And as he started looking at the world's religions, his work became, as we all know, became known as looking for the golden thread. What is the thing that brings us together, not what is that which separates us? And so Ernest, being the keen mind and huge heart that he was, started doing talks not unlike this. He wanted to share his information. So, if it was a room of 20 or 30 people, it's perfect. And as he started talking, word started to spread, and the audiences got bigger and bigger and bigger, and they went from the high school auditorium to the ballroom to a larger ballroom, and people are saying, you have so much information, we can't cover this in one sitting. We need you to speak more regularly. And so he started speaking a little more regularly, and then the NFL notwithstanding, Sunday afternoons became the time when Ernest would do his thing. And again, the crowds are getting bigger and bigger. Now, keep in mind that Ernest Holmes is on record as saying that the last thing the world needs is another church, right? Because he studied all of this, and there is plenty out there to serve everybody on the planet. And so he was really clear that he did not want to start a church. But as he started speaking weekly, as the crowd started growing, people were interested in what he had to say. And he was really also very clear that it wasn't about him, that it was the higher power. It was Spirit speaking through him. So when we're in that question of what needs to be embraced, Ernest had to get out of his own way to embrace the idea that even though the human Ernest isn't interested in creating a church structure, perhaps that's what's going to serve the greater good. So that is when Ernest embraced Ernest, we're on a first name basis. That's when he embraced the idea of creating what is now known as Centers for Spiritual Living. He didn't want to do it, but that's what he needed to embrace to move it forward. And I'm so grateful that he did. And then the third question that we explore then is what needs to be released. We're all vibrating at a certain energetic level. And Rick showed me something on Facebook this morning. It was a quote that said something about, don't be afraid to step into the next dimension of your life. And it was a butterfly that was tethered to a boulder, right? And it's like, let go of your past. And it was we've all heard that, we've all seen that, and it was a beautiful metaphoric explanation. And so what needs to be released so I can call in more good, so I can move to that different level? And I do believe that I am whole, perfect, and complete. And I do believe that you are whole, perfect, and complete. But that doesn't mean that I can't be a different kind of perfect tomorrow, right? Is that a different relationship? Is that a different job? Is that more abundance? Whatever that looks like, I don't find those dichotomous at all. I actually find them very supportive of each other. So when we talk about what needs to be released, this is a story I know well. This is my story. So I moved into practitioner training. When I was in practitioner's training, I started my PhD program. So for those who are not aware, who haven't been through the process, prac training is the equivalent of a master's degree, of a master's level programming, given everything that practitioners need to study and need to embrace. So I was doing prac work. I started my PhD program. And then while I was in both of those programs, I started Holmes Institute, which is a second master's program. So I was in 2 master's level programs and a PhD program at the same time, moving into this thing called ministry. And my tagline at the time, trying to make light of it, when I was a little unsure and the nervous laugh, and I was sharing the whole, Goldberg stepping into ministry thing, I would chuckle a little bit. And when I was talking to lifelong friends, I would say, yeah, I still twitch when I say I go to church, let alone that I'm going to be a minister. And so, I meant that as humor. I meant that to provide an opening for conversation for people, who may not be aware of everything that I had going on. But what do we know about our words? Our words are extraordinarily powerful. Every one of the thoughts that we have and every one of the words that we speak. So as I would say, I still twitch when I say I go to church. We would go to our spiritual community on Sunday. I would sit down and my leg would start twitching. And, I'm strong and I'm young and I can fix this and I don't know what that is. And it was just a really weird thing. So I had to release the thought that my being in ministry somehow was going to make somebody else uncomfortable. I had to get comfortable with it myself. I had to like myself. I had to love myself in ministry and beyond. And I had to get rid of that weak attempt at humor. Now I still use being the only Goldberg who's a member of the Bacon of the Month Club, but that is truth. So, bacon is a whole nother, that's a month-long series actually, but no. So anyway, what needs to be released? I got to release my story to claim my greater yet to be. So as we step into visioning, as you're exploring it in your life and what that looks like, we start with what's the highest and best? What am I calling in, and what does Spirit have in store for me? And then we go to, what do I need to embrace? What brand new information? Ernest didn't want a church. He was told to start a church. He said okay to a church. And what do I need to release? I had to release my limited thoughts around somehow my stepping into ministry was making other people uncomfortable. Guess what? I was the one who was uncomfortable, and that's what I got to move through. So that is a little bit about the process of visioning. I would suggest that anything that Foster mentioned from Gene Houston, we can vision about any of that. We can vision about the ecology. We can vision about the economy. We can vision about any way that we want to show up in the world to be a part of that. And Robert's beautiful song, that it's all starting from within. So we shine the light internally, we start working on our own visioning, and that's when the power occurs. That's the magic moment when we are consciously co-creating our life with the divine. Please join me in prayer.